Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Christy Haberman. And Kai the Wonder Dog is snoring in the background, so if you hear her back there, I apologize for that. I talk about it on almost every episode, she just likes to be in here when I'm recording. She also likes to be in the room when I'm counseling. I'm just not sure I understand it, but there it is. So we're coming off of the long weekend for Thanksgiving. I want to say thank you to all my new listeners that have been listening to my podcast. I sure appreciate you. This past week, it has really jumped up. And I appreciate each and every one of you that's listening. If there's something that you want me to talk about or something that you have questions about that I might have experienced, leave me a message. I have Grieving Insomniacs on Instagram, Grieving Insomniacs on Facebook. I have an email, grievinginsomniacs@gmail.com. I cannot emphasize enough how telling my story and having this podcast has transformed my grief. And I would like to give anyone an opportunity to come on my podcast and talk about anything that you would like to talk about. I'll ask you some questions about trying to get a feel for what the topic is so I can be somewhat prepared. We would do a Zoom meeting, and I know it's hard. But I'm telling you, it's so worth it. I had to practice. I practiced by myself, recording myself, and then I delete it, and I'd practice, and I recorded myself, and I deleted it. And over time, I've gotten used to hearing my voice over, even when I stutter and I say, I don't pretend to be someone that's perfect for this. I don't pretend to be a professional podcaster or anything like that. I'm just a grieving mom that wants to talk to other grieving moms. And I want to talk about the real of grief. I just see too many memes, posts, where I feel like that grief is being minimized. And I've been minimized in my own life by the people around me. And I don't want to minimize others. And so I record this podcast. So I know some of you, this might be your first Thanksgiving, your second Thanksgiving, your third. I hope that there were some moments that you enjoyed, maybe if it was just for a second. And that can be really hard to do, especially in the beginning, because you're so acutely aware that your loved one is not with you anymore. And it can be so, so difficult. And so when I was thinking about this experience, I was thinking about it in the terms of a grief hangover. So there's all the anticipation and the fear of what it's going to be like that builds up to Thanksgiving. I don't know about the rest of you, and I told the story a couple of times back, and I'll update those of you that listen to me regularly. No, my dad did not call for Thanksgiving this year. Did not. I just don't even know what to say about it. But I did not call him either. And in hindsight, maybe I should have. So here's the thing about that. I don't know about the rest of you, but the hardest part for me with the grief is the regret. And I do not want to experience that level of regret I had when Christopher died. Again. To me, it was traumatizing. Oh, so traumatizing. And I ruminate and I overthink. And I spent hours and hours and hours with the regret, working through the regret that I had towards Christopher. And so I think about this when it came to Thanksgiving and my dad. And in hindsight, I probably should have called him. But I didn't. I didn't hear from my brother or my sister either, which is also kind of funny. But like I said, years ago, I stopped even expecting that from them. And so I just was very acutely aware of everyone being missing in my house. And I have talked about signs from Christopher. So I got to tell you, that's what really helps me cope with Thanksgiving. We have weird stuff happen in our house all of the time. Stuff randomly falls off the wall. This is the one that happened recently. We were gone over the weekend, and we came home, and I had accidentally left the door open. Like open. It's open about 2 inches. And then I had this image in my head of my house being, like a haunted house kind of feeling to it. And that's what kept people from coming around my house. Like it was somehow protected because Christopher was watching over it. So we're sitting in our living room today, and our happy holidays sign that we had hanging on the wall had fallen off. So the weird thing about this is it did not fall straight down. There's a speaker, uh, entertainment center. So it didn't fall down behind the speaker. It was, so if it had fallen right down, it would have fallen down facing out, right? Fall down the wall facing out. That is not where this sign was. This sign was facing towards the outside wall between the speaker and the nightstand. So how does that fall like that? Not only that, but the nail that was holding it in the wall just disappeared, just gone. Stuff like that happens in our house all the time. So on Thanksgiving, my younger son was here with his family, and we're doing our thing, and all these chairs fall over, just poof. Me and my husband look at each other and start laughing because, that happens in our house all the time. Things fall off the walls, things fall in the bathroom. We just attribute that to a sign from Christopher that he's around, that he had come to share dinner with us. And my youngest son was like, "Did one of the kids do that?" Me and my husband were like, no, no, the kids didn't do anything. That's just, that just happens around our house. We never said it was Christopher, but I'm sure Colin could have figured that out. So in that way, we have made Christopher a part of our lives. Yes, could it be random, just bumps in the wall? Sure. Something banging on the outside? Sure. But that's not what we choose to believe. We choose to believe that Christopher is around, making his presence known, and wants to be a part of the celebration, which we are absolutely fine with. And that has become a major part of our coping, especially on the holidays. One of the things that I've never really talked about, and I wish in some ways I had kept my journals, but I was just too afraid that if something happened to me and somebody read my journals, I did not want them to know my most inner thoughts. So I don't keep journals anymore for that reason. But very early on, in the first year that Christopher died, it must have been the second year. No, first year. His daughter's birthday. I had her picture pinned up on my wall at my office. I came into my office. Same thing. The picture had fallen off the wall. It did not fall straight down and facing the outside. So if it was a picture, so you would think that it would fall. If it had fallen off the wall, it would be face forward on the ground, right? No, it was not. It was on the opposite wall, facing the inside of the wall. And I just knew that that was Christopher's way of saying happy birthday to his daughter. He was letting me know that he acknowledged that it was her birthday. So he's been around doing this picture thing for years, because that would have been 10 years ago. She's 11, turning 12 this year. So that was years ago. And so he's just been a part of us and around us forever. So when I'm browsing through Facebook and I see people talking about grief recovery, and I see people selling various cures, so to speak, for your grief. Pick one. It doesn't matter which one. Pick any of them. They're all the same to me. I struggle with that idea very much, at least for myself. And I've said this before, I'm wondering if we are selling a false bill of goods to grieving people, making them think that there is some magical cure that will make them less sad, that will make them not experience their hurt again. And I think about myself when I think about this, and I just get this little itch because it just feels wrong. And I've talked about this before. I'm a gut person. I judge whether something's right or wrong based off of how my tummy feels. And when I think about grief recovery, I think asking me to recover from my grief is asking me to not miss my son. And I miss Christopher every day. But understand, I don't want to not miss Christopher. He was a part of my life. He's still a part of my life. And to ask me to not miss him, to not feel hurt because he's not here, I feel like minimizes him, makes him less than. But he is very important. He's very important to me. I know his brother doesn't talk about it, but I know he's important to his brother. Colin just doesn't talk about it with me. But I imagine he talks about it with his wife. And that is the way of things. Kids don't want to know how sad their parents are. And like, I kind of don't want him to know. I want him to see me as capable, and he knows I miss Chris. I know he sees the changes that happen because of Chris. So I know he sees me. And so I'm thinking about, what would grief recovery look like for me? I just can't even fathom that. I'm going to be less sad. I'm going to be less, I miss him less. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I have learned to make Christopher a part of my life. And for those of you that feel like me, I would encourage you to do that. There are some people that not thinking about it or not experiencing it is the best option for them. I get that. But for those of you that are not that way, I would really encourage you to find ways to incorporate them into your life. And I know for some people, the paranormal route is not the route they want to go. But to me, it's not even necessarily the paranormal route. It's just the way that Christopher communicates with me and the way that I communicate with him. Because I, for my own well-being, have to have that connection to him. I found that out long ago, and I used to hide it, right? Because I thought that people would not accept me, would not accept. I've learned I don't care, that it doesn't matter. It only matters what I think. It only matters what's healing for me. And I know it sounds crazy to think that all of the chairs falling down on Thanksgiving was comforting to me, but it was. Having the picture turned around and be in such a weird spot, it's comforting to me. It means that Christopher's around. Christopher's saying hello. So I do know that, especially early on in my grief, I was able to put up a mask for a while, so to speak. This year I did better than I've done in previous years, but I believe it's this podcast, and I believe that the changes that are being made within me by telling my story are making all the difference in the world. So I really encourage you to tell your story. It's hard, but you can do it. I know you can do it, and I will give you the forum upon which to do it if you so choose. But what would happen for me? There's always the anxiety going up to it. What's it going to be like? And I have a 7-year-old granddaughter now. Yeah, she'll be 8 in June. She kept me pretty occupied, which I think helped. So I would be able to maintain for a while. And then after everybody left, is when I allowed myself to be sad. And then this just keep ringing in my head, is the grief hangover. And that's when, especially on triggering events, you almost feel like you're hungover. Because my mind is not present. My mind is thinking about Christopher, and I'm all caught up in my feelings, and they hurt. And they hurt. And I'm missing him. I'm feeling sad about all that he can't experience. And I'm feeling sad that even if I believe he's experiencing it to us in spirit form, He's still not experiencing it in the human form, still not eating. He's not having dinner with us. He can't physically touch us. So it's almost like a hangover. So I wake up the next day, and as I've said before on the podcast, for me, my grief is often expressed as being not feeling good. So the next morning I woke up not feeling very good. But I kind of had to force myself out into the world. So that I wasn't thinking so much. Because that's my problem. I don't know how many of you have that problem, but I overthink way, way too much. And I'm thinking about how much I miss him. And my dad did text me on Thanksgiving and asked me to come over the day after. So I did. And I just think it's so weird. For those of you that never have to question, you never have to question or guess about whether you're invited somewhere or whether or not you're welcome somewhere. And, just be grateful for that. When you never have to question whether you belong somewhere, just be grateful. Because there's some of us that question it every day. I mean, it's just weird, right? Like, why would he not want to see me on Thanksgiving and only want to see me the day after? I don't know. Because he knew I'd be sad about Christopher? I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain things like that anymore. But I do know that it does feel a lot like a hangover the day after a triggering event. So what are some of the things that you can do? So some of the things that I do, I listen to my Christopher music. Like, I really communicate with Christopher through music. But I also have a lot of conversations with him in my head. And I can't emphasize this piece enough. If you're having a conversation with your deceased loved one and you get an answer, believe the answer. Believe it. Because you never know. It might not be him, but why not believe it is him or her? Because the more you listen, the more you'll hear. And that's the other thing, meditation. Our minds are so busy thinking about the future, thinking about the past. I don't know if the rest of you struggle with anxiety. I do. That meditation teaches you to be in the moment and teaches you to listen. So if you want to get to a place where there's peace inside your head, meditate. I like Lily and Eden on YouTube. She's got a lot of really good guided meditations. For me, they help because I have ADHD. Sometimes you can tell because I go from topic to topic in my podcast. But, that's just who I am. I cannot emphasize this enough. I am not a professional podcaster. I'm not even doing this podcast as a counselor, so I'm not trying to sound like a professional counselor. I am just a grieving mom who's telling her story. That's who I am. And I'm okay with that. I just need to be who I am. So meditation. And I cannot emphasize self-care. Self-care looks like different things to different people. I'm learning that my self-care has to look different, meaning I have to exercise. I have a tendency to watch too much TV. So the thing about watching too much TV is it numbs my brain. And there's all kinds of, I don't know if it's the delta waves or the alpha waves or something like that that the TV does that numbs your brain and makes it so you can't think. Well, I got to quit watching TV. It's YouTube I watch mostly, but I got to quit that. I got to start doing more hobbies, more things, doing more art. Those kind of things look like self-care. Having some tea, having some hot chocolate. Going to the grave if you need to. Cry if you need to. Spend time with a comforting person. And just be alone with your thoughts. There's a lot of mental work that goes into grief. And you spend a lot of time thinking. But I think it's necessary. I think it's a part of the grief process that you go in and internally. You have to figure out what meaning this event had for you. You make connections between the past and the future. And it's helped me figure out what kind of person I want to be. I saw one of my aunts this weekend, and I was talking about this family conflict that we have. And I said that I had blocked. They're my cousins. I told the story on here. I blocked my cousins. And she said, well, why do you care? And I said to her, I blocked them for me. Because I don't want to say something horrible. And I'll be the one that's up all night. And I'll be the one that's stewing about it because I said it. So I do it for me. And it took me a long time of trying to work through that to figure that out, that many of the things that I do is to keep me safe. And I attribute this all to being a grieving person because I had so much time to spend alone and so much time to figure this stuff out. Because I know that I don't want to live my life with any more, let's say, bad actions on my soul. That includes the words I speak. That includes my actions. And so if I have to put these manual blocks, so to speak, in place, I will. Because Christopher dying has helped me realize that I want to be a better person. I want to do better. I want to have a good soul. And for that, I can't fault him, Grief taught me that. So do I necessarily think I need to recover from my grief? No. Grief has taught me many things. Grief has brought me to this place of connection to myself, connection to him, connection to the other loved ones in my family. Helped me figure out my past, and it's helping guide my future. So thank you for listening. Man, that's a lot of information. Reach out to me on Grieving Insomniacs. Please like and subscribe wherever you hear this podcast. I'm on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. I hope to this winter branch out to other areas. Thank you for listening, especially to all the new listeners. If you want to tell your story, please reach out. Thank you for listening. This is Christy Haverman and Kai the Wonder Dog signing off.